They always say the hospital feels different after midnight. I used to laugh when the older nurses said that, chalking it up to superstition, or maybe just the fatigue that comes from too many 12-hour shifts. But after last night, I think they were right. The air does change, not in any way you can measure or explain, but in a way you can feel, deep in the space between your ribs. I work at St. Mary's Medical Center, a big modern hospital on the edge of the city. Everything's white and chrome and smells faintly of antiseptic. I'm a registered nurse on the 6th floor, mostly step-down patients, post-op, recovering from serious surgeries, but stable enough to be out of ICU. Usually, night shifts are quiet, too quiet. You start to hear the hum of the fluorescent lights, the rhythm of your own footsteps echoing in the hall, the squeak of your shoes on waxed linoleum. Last night started like any other. I clocked in at 6:45 p.m., still yawning, coffee in hand, hair in a messy bun. My coworker Rachel gave me a quick report before she headed out. "Pretty chill tonight," she said. 2 discharges in the morning. Vitals are all stable. Room 6112's IV pump keeps alarming. You might need to swap it. Easy enough, I thought. By 9 p.m., the ward had settled into its usual rhythm. The low beep of monitors, the occasional groan of a patient shifting in bed, the muffled voice of the TV from the break room. I was making rounds, checking IV sites, charting vitals on my tablet. Room 612, Mr. Haynes, was an older man recovering from a bowel resection. He was polite, quiet, barely spoke. When I went in to silence his pump again, he just stared at me, pale eyes following me in the dim light. "Sorry about the noise, Mr. Haynes," I whispered. He didn't answer, just blinked. When I stepped back into the hall, the light above room 614 flickered. Just once. Quick. It happens sometimes. The hospital's wiring is old in parts, despite all the upgrades. I noted it mentally, but didn't think much of it. By midnight, fatigue had settled in, like a fog. I sat at the nurse's station with my 3rd cup of coffee, scrolling through lab results when I heard it. The faint squeak of wheels down the hallway. Someone was pushing a cart. I looked up, expecting to see the night janitor, Miguel. He usually started mopping around that time, but the hallway was empty. The sound continued, wheels squeaking, rhythmic, like a medication cart being pushed slowly. I stood, craning my neck to see farther down the corridor. The sound stopped. I waited, silence. I told myself it was probably echoing from another floor. Sound travels strangely in hospitals. Still, the hairs on my arms stood up. A few minutes later, the call light for room 6112 flashed. Mr. Haynes. When I went in, he was sitting up in bed, eyes wide. "There was someone in here," he whispered. I felt my pulse spike. "Someone? Who?" He shook his head, staring at the door. "A man. He was standing right there, by the curtain." I glanced behind the curtain. Empty. The only sound was the soft whoosh of the oxygen concentrator. "Mr. Haynes, no one's been in your room except me," I said gently. "You might have been dreaming. You had pain meds a couple hours ago." He didn't answer, just lay back, eyes fixed on the doorway. I adjusted his blanket and slipped out, telling myself it was nothing. Patients hallucinate sometimes, especially with meds or low oxygen. But as I turned to leave, I noticed something strange. The curtain track near the ceiling was swaying slightly, like it had been moved. I told myself the air vent could have done that. I even checked it. The vent wasn't running. Back at the nurse's station, I tried to shake the unease. I charted notes, double-checked vitals, but the quiet started to feel heavy, oppressive. Even the other nurse on duty, Claire, had gone down to the lab for a specimen drop, leaving me alone for a while. Then came the second noise. It was faint, like someone tapping metal against metal. A slow, irregular rhythm. I followed it down the hall. The sound seemed to be coming from the supply closet. I hesitated. I'd opened that closet 1,000 times before, but something about that moment made me stop and listen. Tap, tap, pause, tap. I opened the door. The closet was dark except for the spill of light from the hallway, Shelves of gauze, gloves, IV bags, all neat and still. The sound stopped. I stepped in, heart pounding, scanning the shelves. Nothing. As I turned to leave, I noticed the rolling crash cart, one of the emergency ones we keep stocked for codes, had been moved slightly, angled away from the wall. I grabbed the handle to push it back, and my hand brushed something wet. It was a smudge of blood on the handlebar. Small, like from a fingertip. My breath caught. I checked my gloves. Clean. The blood was fresh. I wiped it off with an alcohol pad, rationalizing as I went. Someone probably had a small cut and grabbed the handle without noticing. Happens all the time. Still, I locked the closet when I left. When I got back to the desk, Claire had returned. "You look like you saw a ghost," she said, half laughing. I told her what happened. She frowned. "Weird. Miguel hasn't been up here yet. I just passed him downstairs." "Maybe a patient wandered out?" I offered. She shook her head. "All doors are alarmed. You'd hear it." We checked the security panel. No alarms triggered. We tried to laugh it off, but the mood had shifted. Even Claire, who had been working nights for 10 years, seemed unsettled. Around 2:30 a.m., the fire door at the end of the hall clicked open. We both froze. It's a heavy door that requires a key card. Boy, only staff can open it. I grabbed my flashlight and walked toward it, every step echoing. When I reached the end of the corridor, the door was ajar, the magnetic seal broken. The stairwell beyond was pitch black. "Hello?" I called out, shining the beam down the stairs. No answer. Something about the darkness below made my skin crawl. I reached out to pull the door closed. And heard footsteps, not far away, right below me, slow, deliberate, one step at a time. I froze. "Security?" I called again. No response. The footsteps stopped. Then nothing. I shut the door quickly and swiped my badge to relock it. When I turned around, the hallway seemed longer than usual, like it stretched into infinity. Back at the station, Claire was pale. "I called security," she said. "They're sending someone up." The guard, Anthony, a big guy with kind eyes, arrived 10 minutes later. He checked the cameras. The monitors showed the hallway, the supply room, the stairwell door. At 2:29:37, the camera caught the fire door unlocking and opening, but there was no one there. No badge swipe, no figure, just the door slowly swinging open. Anthony frowned. "System must have glitched." "Glitched?" I asked. He nodded, though he didn't sound sure. Sometimes the sensors misread reflections, maybe a delay in the feed. But his eyes lingered on the screen too long. After he left, Claire suggested we take turns resting in the break room. I tried, but I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed every sound, every flicker. Around 4 a.m., I gave up and went to check on my patients again. Room 611's door was open. That wasn't right. I'd closed it earlier to let Mr. Haynes rest. When I peeked in, the bed was empty. "Mr. Haynes?" No answer. The bathroom door was open, empty too. My stomach dropped. I called for Claire, and we checked every room, every corner. Finally, we found him, standing barefoot in the hallway, facing the fire door. His hospital gown hung loose on his shoulders. His hands trembled at his sides. "Mr. Haynes," I said softly, "let's get you back to bed." He didn't move. "He's here," he whispered. "Who?" "The man in the mask. He was in my room again. He keeps asking me to go with him." I swallowed hard. "There's no one here, sir." He turned to me then, eyes wide and glassy. "He said you'd say that." We guided him back to bed, gave him a mild sedative per the on-call doctor's order, and I charted everything. But my hands were shaking so badly I could barely type. When I left his room, I saw it again, the curtain track, gently swaying. Claire tried to joke. "Sleep deprivation's contagious, huh?" But her voice wasn't steady either. By 5:30 a.m., I was counting the minutes until sunrise. The ward lights brightened slightly as the hospital shifted toward morning routine. I told myself that if I could just make it to shift change, I'd be fine. But the last hour was the worst. I was finishing documentation when I noticed my tablet had frozen. The cursor blinked and blinked. Then the screen went black. I tapped it. Nothing. When it came back on, the patient list was gone, replaced by a single name. Haynes, Robert, deceased. My breath caught. That couldn't be right. He was alive. I'd just seen him. I refreshed the system. The entry disappeared. I ran to his room. He was lying there, eyes closed, chest still. For a heartbeat I thought, no, please no. Then he exhaled, a soft wheeze, alive, just asleep. I almost laughed from sheer relief. When the day shift nurses arrived, I gave report, trying to sound normal. I didn't mention the noises or the blood on the crash cart or the ghostly door. Just the facts. Vitals stable. No incidents overnight. As I was clocking out, I passed the security office. Anthony waved me over. "Hey, about last night," he said, lowering his voice. "I checked the logs this morning. The fire door didn't just open once." "What do you mean?" "It opened 3 times between midnight and 4 a.m. Each time. No badge entry, no one visible on camera." He hesitated. "The weird part? The motion sensor in the stairwell picked up movement. For about 10 seconds. Then nothing." He looked at me. "You sure you didn't see anyone?" I shook my head. He sighed. "Probably just a glitch, right?" I nodded. "Yeah, a glitch." But when I walked out into the morning light, the exhaustion hit me like a wave. My hands were trembling. My reflection in the glass doors looked pale, drawn, older somehow. I told myself to sleep it off. That night, I dreamed of the hospital hallway. Empty, endless, every door slightly open. I heard wheels squeaking in the dark and someone whispering my name from behind a curtain. When I woke up, my phone buzzed. A message from Claire. "Hey, weird question. Did you take Mr. Haynes's chart home by mistake?" I hadn't. "It's missing," she wrote, "and the system says his record's been archived, but he's still admitted." I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back, "Probably just another glitch." But even as I hit send, I knew that wasn't true. Because when I looked at my scrubs, still crumpled on the chair where I'd dropped them, there was a faint reddish smear on the pocket, like a fingertip of blood, the same as the one on the crash cart. It's strange how silence can feel heavier than sound. In the daytime, St. Luke's Hospital buzzes like a living thing, elevators dinging, phones ringing, carts clattering. But after midnight, the building changes. The noise fades, the lights dim, and every shadow feels too long, like the walls themselves are holding their breath. I've been a nurse here for 5 years, mostly nights in the telemetry unit, cardiac monitoring. The shifts are long, the pay's decent, and you learn to live with the exhaustion. What you don't get used to is how the quiet starts whispering to you around 3 a.m. When the caffeine wears off and your brain starts playing tricks. That's when it happened. It was a Tuesday, technically Wednesday morning, I guess. I came in at 6:45 p.m., badge still warm from my car's heater. The winter wind had teeth that night. Our unit was short-staffed as usual, just me, another nurse named Dana, and a float nurse covering overflow from ICU. "Telly's light tonight," Dana said as she handed off. "Just 5 patients. 4 10s on observation, 4 12s pending transfer. Easy shift." She smiled, that hopeful kind of smile you give before everything goes wrong. By 10 o'clock, the hospital had gone still. My patients were stable. The telemetry monitors blinked their steady green rhythms. Beep, pause, beep. I charted vitals, adjusted a few IV drips, checked on the man in 412 who'd had a mild arrhythmia earlier. He was dozing, nothing unusual. Until around midnight when the admitting nurse paged me. "We're getting a new patient," she said. "Room 414, female, early 30s. Unexplained syncopal episode, just needs overnight observation." "Fine." I prepped the room, turned on the monitor, set up oxygen and suction. The patient arrived at 12:37 a.m. Mom. Name, Mara Collins. She looked pale but calm, clutching a folded hospital blanket like a security item. They said I passed out, she murmured as I helped her onto the bed. Any pain? I asked. She shook her head. Just dizzy. I don't really remember much. I attached her leads, took vitals, started a saline line. Everything was normal. Telemetry read a perfect sinus rhythm, heart rate 78. As I left the room, she said something that made me pause. Do you ever feel like you're being watched here? I smiled faintly. Only by the cameras. She didn't laugh. The night crawled on. The floor was so quiet you could hear the hum of the vending machine down the hall. Around 2 a.m., I went back to check on her. She was awake, staring at the monitor screen. I can't sleep, she whispered. The beeping keeps changing. I listened. Steady rhythm. Normal. It's the same as before, I said gently. She frowned. No, it's not. There's another one under it, like another heartbeat. I glanced at the telemetry. Only one signal showing. Her leads were fine. Sometimes the machine picks up interference, I told her. Could be another room. Her eyes darted toward the hallway. Can you check? I nodded even though I knew it was pointless. I walked the hall, rooms 410, 412, 416. Everyone asleep. Monitors steady. The hall lights flickered slightly near the exit, but they always did. When I came back, Mara was sitting up, staring at the door. Someone just walked by, she said. I turned. Empty hall? Probably Dana, I said. She wasn't wearing scrubs. That made me pause. Did you see their face? Mara shook her head. No, just someone walking. Then they stopped right there. She pointed toward the doorway. I stepped into the hall again, heart thumping. Nothing but the soft whir of the air vents. I closed her door halfway, smiled, told her to try to sleep. But my hands were shaking. Around 2:40 a.m., the monitor at the nurse's station beeped. 414 had disconnected. I sighed, grabbed new electrodes, and walked back down the hall. Her room was dark. Mara? I whispered. No answer. I turned on the low light. The bed was empty. The leads dangled over the edge, adhesive still warm. The IV pole was standing, saline bag half full. I checked the bathroom. Empty. A ripple of fear crawled up my spine. I checked the hallway. Nothing. I called Dana on the intercom. Hey, 414's patient isn't in her room. You see her anywhere? No, Dana said. She's not on my side. We searched, day room, storage, even the vending area. Nothing. Security was called. The cameras showed her in her room at 2:38 a.m., then static. When the feed returned 20 seconds later, she was gone. Probably walked out, the guard said. We'll check the stairwells. But the door alarms hadn't triggered. I went back to her room. Something in me didn't want to, but I did anyway. The air felt different, colder. The blanket she'd been holding was on the floor. On the monitor, her name had disappeared. Just a blank line where M. Collins should have been. I tried re-entering it, but the system wouldn't accept the ID. Patient not found. My pulse hammered. I backed out and went to the supply closet for a new sensor battery, just to have something to do. That's when I saw it. A chart sitting on the counter. Her chart, except the label didn't match. Collins, Mara, date of death, Lo-2-17-2018. I froze. That was 7 years ago. It had to be a mistake, an old record. Some file left on the wrong unit. But the patient ID number was identical to the one I'd entered hours ago. I felt dizzy. My vision tunneled. When I looked up, the hallway light flickered. Once, twice, then steadied. And for a split second, reflected in the glass panel of room 414, I saw someone standing inside, not moving, watching me. I told myself I was exhausted. I'd worked 6 nights in a row. Sleep deprivation can do things to you, make you see shapes, hear sounds that aren't there. So I went back to the nurse's station, tried to focus on charting. At 3:12 a.m., the monitor for 414 came alive again. The heart rate line pulsed steady, 78 BPM, exactly the same as before. But no one was in that room. Dana, I whispered, look. She leaned over, frowned. Did you rehook her leads? No. We both stared at the screen. The telemetry line was clean, artifact-free, as if the leads were perfectly placed. Then the rhythm changed, doubled, 2 heartbeats overlapping, one slower, one faster. Dana swore under her breath. "The hell is that?" Before I could answer, the alarm beeped. Systole. Flatline. I ran. The room was dark again, empty. The monitor at the bedside glowed faintly. The leads, the same ones I found on the bed, were now attached to the pads, perfectly placed. But the wires led nowhere, not to the patient, not to anything. I ripped them off. My hands were trembling. When I looked up, the hallway was empty again. But for the first time, I noticed something I hadn't before. A faint smudge on the tile floor, near the doorway. Bare footprints, small, faint, leading toward the stairwell. I followed them halfway before they vanished. When I came back, the telemetry monitor was blank, the patient name line gone again. Security never found her. No one matching her description was in the building's admission system. The ER swore they'd transferred her up. I saw her wristband, scanned it myself. But when we tried to pull her record again, the system crashed. Ite later told us there was no record of a Mara Collins ever being admitted that night, or any night. They said maybe it was a data glitch, cross-referencing old archives. But the old file, the one I found in the supply closet, vanished too. No one saw it after that. I didn't sleep for 2 days after that shift. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face in that hospital bed, pale under the monitor glow, asking if I ever felt watched. A week later, Dana asked if I wanted to see something. She'd pulled an archived report from years back. A woman named Mara Collins, cardiac arrest during transport to telemetry. She'd been admitted for unexplained syncope. She died in room 414. Same room. I transferred floors after that. Pediatrics, bright and noisy. I told myself it was just burnout, data errors, coincidence. But some nights, when I'm covering breaks and the halls go quiet again, I swear I hear a monitor beeping faintly down the corridor. Steady rhythm, then doubling. And once, when I passed telemetry on my way to the elevator, I glanced at the monitor screens through the glass. Room 414 was listed as vacant, but there was a green heartbeat line, and the name above it flickered once before vanishing, M. Collins. It started with the sound of breathing, not mine, not the patient's, just breathing. Shallow, ragged, close enough that I could feel the air move. But when I turned, no one was there. I've been a nurse for 8 years, night shifts for 6. You think you get used to it, the isolation, the fatigue, the way the hospital feels like a tomb after midnight, but you don't. You just stop talking about it. I work on the psych med unit at St. Augustine's, an old section of the hospital they never renovated. The paint's faded, the fluorescent lights flicker, and the ceiling vents hum like a trapped bee. It smells like bleach and sleep deprivation. We take overflow psych patients, those waiting for transfer to dedicated facilities. It's mostly fine, until it's not. That night we were down to a skeleton crew, just me, 1 tech, and the security guard. 10 patients. I hadn't slept more than 3 hours in 2 days. My head felt stuffed with static, my hands jittery from caffeine. At 11:47 p.m., I finished checking meds and sat at the nurse's station trying to focus on charting. The hallway stretched out in both directions, long, sterile, lit by those awful, buzzing lights that make everything look sickly yellow. That's when I heard the first sound, a slow, rhythmic tap, 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 coming from room 323. That was empty. I stood rubbing my eyes. The sound stopped. "Probably the pipes," I muttered. But when I stepped closer, I realized it wasn't pipes. It was coming from inside the room, sharp, deliberate, like fingernails on glass. I pushed the door open. The room was dark except for the glow from the hall spilling over the bed. Empty. Then, movement. The bathroom door creaked. My pulse spiked. I grabbed the handle and yanked it open. Nothing. just the echo of my own breathing. I turned off the light and shut the door, telling myself it was nerves, exhaustion. But as I stepped back into the hall, the motion sensor light flicked on behind me. It only does that when something moves. By 12:30 a.m., I was jumpy enough to double-check every door on the unit. The patients were all asleep except for one, Mr. Lawson, in 327. He was sitting up in bed, staring at the wall. "You okay, Mr. Lawson?" I asked. He didn't answer. When I stepped closer, I realized he was watching the reflection in the window. "Someone's out there," he whispered, "by the nurse's desk." I turned. The hallway behind me was empty. "No one's there," I said softly. He shook his head. "You just missed him." I checked the blinds. Nothing outside either, just the dark courtyard, slick with rain. When I turned back, he was smiling faintly. "You'll see him soon." Around 1 a.m., I went to the med room to restock Ativan. It's a small room, barely big enough for one person. The walls always feel too close. As I bent to grab supplies, I heard it again. Breathing. Right behind me. I spun around so fast I hit my elbow on the cabinet. No one, but the air still moved, warm and sour. I stood there, holding my breath, waiting. Then, click. The door latch moved. I yanked the door open. The hall was empty. When I turned back, my reflection in the metal cabinet looked off, too pale, eyes too wide, like someone else wearing my face. I laughed under my breath, that thin, hysterical kind of laugh you give when you're trying not to panic. Sleep deprivation, that's all it was. At 2:13 a.m., the intercom crackled. "Code Gray Unit 3, it said. A code gray means combative patient. I froze. None of our patients were mobile. No one had called it. Then I realized the voice wasn't coming from the speaker. It was coming from the hallway, like someone whispering through a static filter. "Code Gray, Unit 3. Over and over. I stepped into the hall, every muscle tight. The lights buzzed, dimmed, then flared. At the far end of the corridor, someone was standing just outside the glow. Tall. Still. I blinked, and they were gone. I don't remember walking back to the nurse's station. I just remember the feeling. Cold sweat, pulse in my throat, eyes darting to every shadow. I checked the security feed. The cameras looped black for 3 seconds, then came back. Nothing there. I started thinking about Mr. Lawson's words. "You'll see him soon." At 3:00 a.m., I gave up pretending I wasn't scared. I called the tech, Jasmine, on the radio. "Can you come to the desk?" Static. Then, whispering. Not words I could make out, just breath against the speaker. "Jasmine?" The line clicked off. I went to look for her. Her cart was abandoned near the end of the hall, gloves half unrolled on the counter. "Jazz?" The stairwell door was ajar. I pushed it open and shone my flashlight down the stairs. Something moved 2 flights below, a shadow slipping through the emergency light. "Jasmine?" No answer. I took 1 step down and stopped. There were footprints on the concrete, bare, small, leading upward, right toward me. I bolted the door and backed away, shaking. By 3:30 I started feeling detached, like I was watching myself from somewhere else. The monitors blinked in rhythm with my pulse. Every beep echoed in my skull. Then the power flickered. Once, twice. When it came back, half the patient doors were open, every one that had been closed before. I stood there, not breathing, and from down the hall, tap, 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 room 323, again. I wanted to call security, but my hands wouldn't move. My radio was dead. I walked toward the sound. The door was wide open now. The room was empty. The light was out. But there was something written on the inside of the door, faintly, in what looked like marker, or maybe dried blood. "Stay awake." I stumbled back. My vision swam. That's when I heard the monitor alarm from 327. Mr. Lawson. I ran. He was standing beside his bed, staring at the window again. "She's behind you," he said. I turned. Nothing. But when I looked back, he was holding something. a folded patient wristband. He handed it to me, trembling. The label read, Collins Mara Telemetry Unit 2018. The air left my lungs. I saw her, he whispered. In the hallway. You didn't. I dropped the band and backed out. My knees nearly gave way. At 4:15, I was done. I couldn't take it any more. I called security again, no answer. I went to the exit, swiped my badge. The reader blinked red. Access denied. I tried again. Red. I hit the door, screaming for help. No one came. Then, footsteps behind me, slow, bare, wet on the tile. I turned around. No one. But the motion sensor light at the far end of the hall flicked on. Then the next one. Then the next. Like someone was walking toward me. I backed up until my spine hit the wall. Who's there? Silence. Then breathing. Closer this time. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making a sound. And then, just above the hum of the lights, I heard a whisper. Right beside my ear. Code gray. I must have blacked out. When I came to, it was 6:10 a.m. The sun was rising through the narrow windows, making everything look too bright, too normal. The doors were closed again. Jasmine was at the station, charting like nothing happened. You okay? She asked. I stared at her. Where were you last night? She frowned. What do you mean? I was here. You were the one who disappeared. What? You went to 323, she said. Then we couldn't find you for almost an hour. She looked at me like she was worried. You sure you're all right, Nora? I never told her what I saw. When I checked the logs later, there was no record of a code gray that night, no power outage, no camera malfunction. But the message board, the one we used to assign rooms, had one extra line typed in under the patient list. 323 occupied, no name, just a blinking cursor. I transferred to another hospital 2 months later. Day shifts only, I tell myself what happened was exhaustion, a psychotic break from lack of sleep. The mind can do terrible things when it's pushed too far. But sometimes, when I'm in the med room at my new job, I still feel that breath at the back of my neck. And once, when the overhead speaker crackled for a second, I could have sworn I heard it, a whisper, low and familiar. Code Gray, Unit 3.